This is called the Hardle Family VHS. There's a picture of Jim Lambert, and then everybody's walking out of a chapel. I think this is a funeral for Bupa.
It's in Manti. I know it's a church.
There's Uncle Dan and my dad holding Mama. Cliff is walking alongside, and my mom comes out behind them waving. And I really do think this was Bupa's funeral because Mama looks lost and sad. And the camera keeps rolling here. Here comes Ray out of the chapel. And he hams it up a little.
He's happy.
And then some other attenders. So Heather,
There was somebody who lived in Manti that knew them.
Yeah.
That guy was. But I don't know who they are.
Do you know what year he died?
No.
I think that's Julie Hardle,
idea.
Ray's daughter, Julie, in the white skirt, and I think she's hugging Karen, her sister.
This probably would have been in Manti, wouldn't it?
It was that. I know that church is in Manti on the main street. I know that. There's May and
Merrill.
Kemp.
Yeah,
And
there's
Jack Nyland.
Jack Nyland just came out of the door.
And that is Julie Hardle. Julie was somebody. And
There's Helen and Jack Nyland briefly, and Mel Sweat. He was married to Aunt Marge for a period of time. Aunt May and Merrill, and there's Julie Lambert.
there's me.
And Heather.
And my Roadrunner 383.
She was the terror of the neighborhood.
That was when I was about 19 years old. Boy, that was a nice little Roadrunner car. And my dad took it one day and raced my brothers in it. And I was sitting in the driver's seat because I was too scared to go fast like the guys. And my dad got to 147 miles per hour in my car and beat my brothers because they could only go to 135. And that was on 7th East. And so, you know, very dangerous. I can't believe he went that fast on that street. That was a fast car.
Yeah, there's a film of a van here. We got Uncle Cliff and Merrill Kemp, and here comes Jack Turner's dad, Bill
Nyland.
Bill Nyland.
With his wooden leg, and he limped a lot. This is Dan with his dune buggies.
Uncle Cliff with his dune buggy. So this is probably now a hunt in Manti where everybody came together. It was a family reunion / hunt.
That's in Mum and Bupa's backyard that they're driving around in a circle. And there was always chickens running around, and Bupa was calling his chickaries. Now we're inside Mum and Bupa's house. It's a little old pioneer house. Had terrible lighting. It was with a little wire and a bulb.
There's Bill Nyland, and then followed by Bupa, my grandfather. And there's his daughter Helen, my aunt. And a picture of my dad.
Wasn't that Margaret?
And Mama.
And Leanna. There's my cousin Leanna.
Might have been Marge then.
And she was 13 at that time. Mama had very long hair. And she'd take it out every night and comb it out and braid it to the front. And then in the morning she'd comb it out and put a braid and then roll it up in a bun. And you never saw her in the daytime with her hair down or any event. Everyone who ever saw her hair was always up in a bun. And there's Bupa with his chickens. And he always said, "Here, chicory," and they were always running to his feet. He really enjoyed his chickens. And to the right, he always had a garden going on there. and he couldn't bend over and do gardening very well, not limber. He had a lot of arthritis. His hands were completely curled. He couldn't unroll his hands and make them flat. They were totally like little claws. And so he had a big hoe, and he'd garden with the hoe and dig around the weeds and plant that garden. He was working with his chickens or that little garden an awfully lot of the time. On the back patio, there's an old-time washing machine with a wringer. And Mama went out there for so many years and washed the clothes and used the wringer to dry it. I remember so much thinking, really, you can't get a washer and a dryer here? You got to wring it and hang it up to dry still. In my day and age, you're using a wringer for a washing machine. There's Aunt May, and Margaret is the littler one.
Oh, that's Mama.
Oh, that's Mama. Absolutely, it's not. Yeah, you're right.
And Helen.
Oh, and Helen.
And I've seen this video before, and it's very interesting. All the girls would affectionately put their arm around their mother, grandma, but they never did that to their dad. And I've heard some stories that he was mean when he was younger, and they didn't hold very much affection for Bupa. But you can see that in these videos here. There's a picture of Mama Bupa, Bill Nyland,
Tammy, and Dan Hardle. And May, and is that Bill Nyland behind her?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Bill Nyland. And that's young Dave Kemp.
That's Dan.
Now they're in Las Vegas. Is that where they are?
Well, I'm thinking this might be California again.
And then it flips back to Bill Nyland. Had his very signature walk because he had that wooden leg. He had a accident broke his leg very, very severely, and they had to amputate it.
He was working on a plane, and they had some scaffolding that was supposed to have been attached to the plane, and it wasn't. And he went up and fell through a hole and had a compound fracture. Jack described it as sticking out about 3 inches, and they couldn't save his leg. They had to amputate it.
Then they have Pauline, who changed Anita's diaper. They're the youngest grandbaby at the time. It was Ray and Pauline. They changed the baby's diaper, and they're showing all our hot rod cars because everyone then, it was such a big deal to hot rod. Then Bill Nyland gets on a bicycle and jokes and falls over. Mama and her this little pioneer house and a little heating stove they heated and cooked with. There's young Ray, Bupa, Bill Nyland.
One of my memories of Mama is she would always make me a cup of hot chocolate whenever I wanted. One of the reasons I loved her so much. And there's Aunt Helen with a cat. She loved animals.
Mama was actually a very good cook, and she made really good hot chocolate. She put vanilla in it and creams, and she made cakes all the time whenever you came. And she made nice little frosting on them. And I remember asking her to frost them, and she taught me how to swirl the frosting to make it look pretty. A lot of us took turns staying in the summer. This is right before my mission. I was 20 years old there. My cousin Pamela was 19. She's next to it. She went to Argentina on her mission right after me. I know that because it's a missionary blouse I wore. So this was right before my mission. Then there's May Kemp with her daughter Becky came out and waved. My mom's there. That's my cousin Karen. And there's Tammy Hardle and Becky and Rebecca. She likes to be called Rebecca better. She's going back and forth. And is that Leonard or
I think
Dave?
that's Leonard.
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been Jimmy. But there's Ray's children there. Sitting next to Mom, I think, is Jim. Oh, and there's
Picture of my mom and
Ray thinks he's funny, spraying everyone with the hose. Suzanne's in her red kind of check dress.
There's Heather in a white blouse and blue skirt.
Meryl, Kim. I'm next to my dad for a while there. Then Ray's family in that kind of circle. There's Karen. Let's see, who's that? Cliff.
That's Uncle Cliff.
That is Dave Lambert. That's a Cindy, I think, or Anita. Cindy, I think. I think that's Cindy, but it's definitely one of Ray's youngest. And there's Pauline and Ray, and looks like Dave Kemp there with May and Meryl and
Cliff and looks like Dan, May, Bill Nyland, Jack Turner,
Jim Lambert.
Jim Lambert's in there. There were Muma and Bupa.
Julia Lambert, Melvin Sweat, Anita.
Muma and Bupa had 9 children. The oldest boy died in a car accident at about age 19, and so I grew up with the four boys, my dad and 3 uncles, Dan, Cliff, and Ray, and then there were 4 aunts, four girls, May, Marge, Helen, and Betty. There's a picture of Bupa waving. He had an old Nash Rambler in the backyard. He used to stand with his right hand on his hip. And I've got a couple of pictures of me in the mission field standing with my right hand on my hip. It's something genetic.
Bupa always wore suspenders and Mama always had an apron. She had an apron with a sweater on. And then you see the braid in her hair. Always a sweater, always an apron. The only time I ever saw Mama without an apron was when she was at church. Mama liked to go to the Manti Temple, and she sat in one little specific chair all the time. And Margaret would call it the Mama chair. And at that time in this Manti Temple, the white dresses weren't all the way to the ground. They were just below the knees. And everywhere else, they wore these long white dresses. And I went to the Manti Temple, and then they wore them these mid-length between your knees and your ankles. And it was so surprising. And they all looked like old nurses or something. It was kind of funny to me at the time. But I remember the one chair, and Mama loved to go there. This was a nice little family reunion, and I remember it. We had so much fun playing with the cousins there. This is Becky, May and Meryl's daughter. So this is a wedding, huh? With who's the wedding? Jack. So there's Jack and Jan getting married. Wow, that is Dave Kemp with them. And so that was Clarita, obviously. Jack and Jan's wedding, huh? Or is this Dave and Clarita's wedding?
It's one of those two.
It looks like Jan was in the white dress, but their other ones are getting in the car. Dave, there's 3 in the car? Like Steve, someone hiding in the car when you got married?
Looks like a crowded honeymoon to me. They drive away in a nice Mustang. There's Aunt Marge and Mama again laying on a bed. Bupa, he's tired of having the lights from the camera shining in his eyes.
Guess everyone was saying enough. So are the Lambert kids. There's J.D., James, David, and Julia and Christian. See, there's the garden I talked about. And he had that garden when you couldn't get up and down very well. There was always a garden there. Every single summer he grew a nice garden. They were a touch younger because he's still moving pretty good. But no matter how old he was, he had that garden going. That's James David Lambert.
Notice how Papa moves out of the camera.
Yeah, he does always move out of the camera, doesn't he? There's Betty. Did Bubba have pigs? Or was that Melvin's pigs? I bet they were Melvin's pigs because Melvin had pigs. They had this little lot that was a couple miles from their house that he rented for a while. And Bubba said he's going to farm it and earn some money and sell on it. But the land wasn't very good, and they weren't very successful with this land. Didn't rent it for very long, and it was a lot of work and a little pay.
This is in Butte, Montana?
No, this is in Manti.
Manti.
It's about a mile from their house. Half a mile.